Now this will tell us. And that's pretty conclusive. Still going. Close. I think he got it down.
How strong is he?
Welcome back, punters. Thanks for joining us once again. It is a new year, but the same old Pick and Go podcast back to preview all the upcoming footy for another exciting season. Very pleased to welcome back in the studio in Petone, the great Paul Moati. Paul, how have you been?
I'm very good, thank you, Patrick. I know we're still a few weeks out from the start of the season, but I'm getting pumped. I'm ready for a bit of football.
I won't go into any detail there. We'll let you maybe explain it to the punters later on. But also joining us from Petone, Richard Leddy. How have you been, mate?
Very good, thank you, Patrick. Been down in Christchurch for the weekend. The rugby sort of fever is getting the hypes up. They're talking about the Crusaders this season, so I'm sure we'll touch on that, see how they're going on this podcast today.
Yeah, doesn't sound like them. We're just random people stopping you in the street talking about how the Crusaders are going to win everything. I presume that's what it's like down in Christchurch. And last but not least, very pleased to be joined from across the Tasman by Matthew Fisk. How have you been, Fisky?
I am excited, guys. I think the stars are aligning. I'm stuck in Sydney. The Waratahs have just signed Jamie Roberts, so I might be a chance playing some Super Rugby this year myself. They're getting desperate, the Tars. So I'm holding out hope they might give me a call. But yeah, very excited about the season. It's only about 3 weeks away, so bring it on.
Yeah, no, it's going to sneak up on us before we realise it. It feels like it starts sooner every year at the moment. So hopefully, fingers crossed, all goes well and we do get underway at Mount Smart Stadium on February the 17th. Should be a pretty exciting clash between the Blues and Moana Pacifica. But got plenty of time to sort of do an in-depth preview of Super Rugby Pacific and everything coming up. So I thought we'd just do a bit more of a overview of the year of rugby as a whole, dive into a few little questions I've got written down here, see what we come up with. I'm sure there'll be plenty of disagreement, maybe a little bit of agreement there. So I'll kick it off nice and simple. First question is, obviously the Crusaders are hot favourites to take out Super Rugby Pacific. Bookies have got them 275 at the moment. Fisky, if you had to pick, are you taking the Crusaders or going with the field?
No, I'll go the value play. I'll take the field. I don't know which one can beat them, but I think 275, we're flipping a coin. I'll take the other side. And you look through it, Retallick and Kane at the Chiefs, Roger and Bodie at the Blues, and Geordie and Artie at the Canes. One of those sides will lift. Obviously, one will be in the final against the Crusaders. So I'll go field.
All right. How about you, Richard? Did you buy into the propaganda over the weekend? Yeah,
it's safe to say I bought into propaganda. I think, I just can't see them. They're definitely deserved favourites. 275, probably a pretty nice price. They obviously won Super Rugby Aotearoa last year, and they were unlucky to miss out in that final of the Trans-Tasman competition, just a few points in it. So I'll be taking Crusaders at 275 in that market.
Paul, yours, please.
Yeah, I can see why Fisky has taken the field when you've got 11 runners in a 12-horse race at $1.40. I can see why that would seem attractive, but I've had a look at the Crusaders squad, and I've looked at the other New Zealand Super Rugby squads, and I just can't see them getting beat, especially when it comes down to a final. I agree. I do think they'll be in the final, but in the end, I just think they'll be just a wee bit too good. I look at the players who they've sort of lost from last season, and you look, they've lost a bit out of the front row, but I think they had the opportunity to sign a returning Crusader who then signed with the Hurricanes because they were quite keen, because Crusaders were quite keen on the young front row sort of stock that was coming through. So I just look at that. I love the fact that they've picked up the Argentinian Matera. I think he's a huge plus for the Crusaders.
What would the All Blacks give to have Matera available for them? Brilliant player.
It's fantastic. You look at their outside backs. it's a matter of who's going to get the jersey sort of. Obviously, Will Jordan will definitely have one of them, but then you're tossing up between George Bridge, Severis, Whainguku. They've got Naholo down from, I think it was the Chiefs last season. The midfield getting back to full strength again with Goodhue and Enor. Richie I haven't mentioned Richie Mwangi yet, who just runs around most Australian teams for fun. And the forwards, they look strong as well. It just is very, very hard to go past the Crusaders, even though they are fairly short at 275. I'm going to side with the Crusaders at 275.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did the hard work of reading out all the stars they've got in their squad, particularly the backline there, Paul, because I'm on the same page as you there. I think 275 is a ridiculous price. Like, let's be honest, they're going to be in the semi-finals, right? And outside of maybe being up at Eden Park, are they going to be longer than $1.40, $1.50 against any other side in a semi-final, like barring injury or something like that? I think, yeah, you're going to get a better price on them now than if you were to back them head-to-head in the semis and final.
We'll see, fellas. I'm actually quite confident in my position because with the way that the comp's going to be, really just New Zealand sides together for an extended period, I think that works against the Crusaders. I think it just makes it so tough week in, week out to be up, and they're going to be playing good opposition. They might have a slip up, and that's what happened in the Trans-Tasman. So, yeah, I think it's really, really tough to be up every week when you've got sides just hunting for you, and that's what they'll be doing.
So, you pretty keen on the Blues then?
No, like I say, I could slightly split these competitors, but all three of them, I could make an argument for all three. Like the Chiefs did a wonderful job last season, and so did Waikato, and then Retallick really sort of back now, and he needs a big season. I thought he was a bit off last year, so. Sam Cane get to full fitness, so they're kind of strengthened, if anything. So I'll put the Chiefs right in that mix as well. But Blues, wow, Bodie, Roger, and then Caleb Clark didn't get a lot of runs. So wow, it's great pack. I think there's a lot of good players out there and teams out there that can challenge Crusaders.
Yeah, no, I'm interested to hear you say that because I think the Blues, like obviously the backlines, it's completely star-studded. Roger, Bodie, the headlines write themselves, but everyone's forgetting that Patrick Tupolotu is off playing in Japan this season. I feel like we saw in the Super Rugby Trans-Tasman final when he went off and then was luckily able to be subbed back on. He was a massive loss. I think the Blues, especially against the Chiefs and the Crusaders, might be lacking a little bit in the engine room. Like they weren't exactly dominating up front last season when they played the Crusaders, and I think they'll struggle even more without Paddy there, who was such an inspirational leader for them. Interested to hear what the Tugi and Petone have, who says the biggest threat to the Crusaders.
Chiefs for me, yeah. I think I was thinking the same as you, Patrick, about the Blues. You know, their backline, I'm looking forward to seeing their backline run around, but the full back's definitely lacking. And the Chiefs, I think they're about 550. That would be, if I wasn't backing the Crusaders, I'd definitely be going with the Chiefs. They've got pretty solid squad. Joshuani's, made the move there, providing sort of Lynette Brown to Pye can stay fit. They've got a pretty, they've got a great backline themselves with McKenzie as well. So, and they've got Takiaho, who's one of the players of last year, in that All Blacks end-year season. So if he can sort of continue that form, I reckon the Chiefs would be, I'm still definitely think Crusaders 275, happy to take it, but I'm expecting the Chiefs Crusaders final.
And let's not forget young players there, Rissy, like Josh Lord, who did so well for Naki last year. Yeah, absolutely. So great young forwards coming through, which is, we'll talk about it later, which is what New Zealand need. Chiefs probably my pick too, mate. Well said. Challenge. Yeah, sorry.
Paul?
Yeah, no, I'm going with the Blues outside of the Crusaders. I understand the loss of Tuipulotu. I think Luke Romano is a huge plus for the Blues experience-wise, and I think he'll be able to sort of not necessarily replace Tuipulotu, but I think he can certainly fill in that gap to a certain extent, especially with the experience that he has. We've already looked at the back line. Bowden Barrett, if there's one guy that you want to be learning the game off, when you're fresh back into rugby, you want to be outside Bowden Barrett, and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck gets that. I think he's going to have a big season. So I think that backline will be very, very hard to stop. It's just a matter of whether that forward pack can obtain enough quality ball for the backs to then express themselves. So, yeah, outside of the Crusaders, I think the market is fairly much where it should be in regards to that outright winner book. The Crusaders deserve to be favourites, and I think the Blues deserve to be just in behind them. So if the Crusaders were to get upset, I think the team most likely to do it would be the Blues.
As a long-time Hurricanes fan, Paul, I thought you'd be well aware of the struggles of a team loaded with talent in the back line that can't get their hands on any ball. But I'll just leave that there. We've touched on, already mentioned plenty of superstars in the competition, the likes of Bodie, Richie Mo'unga, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, but a bit more of an abstract question here, but just keen to hear from each of you. If you say you were put in charge of building a new franchise, we've obviously got Moana Pacifica and the Fijian squad joining this year, but some Australian billionaires got a new squad popping up in Sydney or Adelaide, and you can sign one player to start your franchise with. Who are you doing it? I'll let you kick this one off, Paul.
Hold on, Paddy. Is it an Aussie? Is it a Tri-Nations or Four Nations player, or is it anyone around the world?
I've left it open to your interpretation.
Okay.
You can do whatever you want.
Okay, sorry.
Is it a current player, or could it be someone who's played before?
No Zinzam Brooks. I know you like to bring him to every podcast.
George Napier is not a valid answer.
I'm going with Richie Mo'unga. I just think if you think of the NFL, they build everything around the quarterback, and I guess the position that relates closest to that in rugby would be the first 5'8", and I think Richie has proven that he can control a game even when his forward pack is going backwards. So I'm very, very strongly for Richie Mo'unga to be the player that I would then build a Super Rugby squad around.
All right. How about you, Richard?
I'm going to go with Ardie Savea in this one. Just, reliable. You know what you're getting. Your leads from the front. He's a proven leader, so he'd be the captain as well. And, he just gives it 100% every game. And I think, it doesn't, obviously when you start a super franchise, you might be having a hard time to start off, but you know that he's a guy who will just give us all, and he'll be able to sort of try lead by example. I'd love to see him in that sort of he'd be my player to start the franchise with.
Nice one. Yeah, that's a great shout. How about you, Fisky?
James Roberts.
Yeah, right. He might lead the nursing home team, but the one I absolutely love as a footballer, as a leader, full of experience, and his side never take a backward step. I think you could build a side around him, and he's probably still got 2 or 3 years left. Eben Etzebeth, I think he's a wonderful player you can build a side around. And I think any good coach would try and grab him. And if you've seen the All Blacks, on that sort of end of season tour, and just missing that experience in the lock position, something like a Scott Barrett was missing, and it's just such an important position these days. That physicality, contact, that leadership around the park, and I think Etzebeth's got all that in spades. I love him, and I think he'd be the player I'd build a side around.
Yeah, that's a great shout. He's one I hadn't really thought about, to be honest. Just sort of looked at it with a more New Zealand-centric lens, but along the same, not my actual pick, but Sam Whitelock was one I had considered. Probably age is getting a bit up there to make him a viable candidate here, but just in terms of setting that culture and winning attitude and the work rate he gets through, and just pretty much guaranteed you're going to have a great set piece along the same lines there. But I end up actually going on a completely different path. Went with Geordie Barrett. I just a lot of.
That's a name I thought Fisky might bring up.
I considered him. I did consider him.
Well, for me, it's Geordie. Like we've sort of talked about, you've got Bodie and Mo'unga offer a very similar skill set there. If you're looking at your 10, you got Ardie and maybe a Michael Hooper or a Sia Khaleesi sort of. Whereas I think Geordie, the skill set we're seeing him develop, that leap he took in the Rugby Championship last year, he's like, I don't want to
The one he got carded for?
Well, you know, I'm a big fan of
Get
that
me
sort
to
of
it,
work
yeah.
on the field, Paul. But yeah, especially the way, like, sort of his long kicking game, the size and presence he brings returning kicks. You can essentially play him anywhere from 10 to 15. The All Blacks have certainly tried playing him on the wing enough, but he's a great fullback, and just the outsized importance that the kicking game is taking on in modern rugby. I think he's the perfect sort of anchor to build a team around. Like, obviously, you've got to build a strong forward pack. No one player is going to give you that outstanding forward pack. It's got to be sort of strength and depth there. Whereas Geordie, I don't think you can replicate that skill set out of maybe Freddie Stewart if he takes another step forward this year. But I don't think there's any other fullback in world rugby quite like him.
I think you're right, Pat. There's no fullback quite like him, and I think he's grown into a leadership role probably the last 2 or 3 seasons at the Hurricanes, firstly, and then he's actually transitioned that into the All Blacks, and I think he's a key leader of that side now. So I did consider him. I did consider Artie, and so good shouts, everyone. I did not consider Moanga though, Paula, but good effort though. Good effort, mate.
Yeah. Can we go back to he's proven he can control the game with his forward pack going backwards comment? Because I'd love to see that.
And Super Rugby, maybe.
And Super Rugby. Yes, he
Has
can.
his forward pack ever gone backwards in Super Rugby?
Yes, it has.
It's
All
the
right,
Hunters and they lost.
I'm not going to let us get derailed. I've got to keep the show on the tracks. But yeah, I'd love to see what video you're watching there, Paul. Anyway,
being a Hurricanes fan, it's like being a Buffalo Bills fan. You've got all the pieces there. Yeah, they'll take you on a journey, and then they'll let you down at the last sort of dance. So because you said the Hurricanes had a sort of a Rolls-Royce backline and have historically had a Rolls-Royce backline and not much under the bonnet. I still think the Crusaders have quite a bit more under the bonnet this season than the Hurricanes have had for the past few seasons. So I still think 275 is, although short.
I wasn't arguing with that. I was comparing this year's Blues to the old Hurricanes.
Oh, Roger.
Yeah, exactly. Moving along, got
great Buffalo Bill reference. I thought we were going down the Silence of the Lambs path, and we could our favourite Buffalo Bill moment. But we'll leave that to another podcast.
Yeah,
he's got skin in the game.
Silence of the Lambs mentioned far too much on the TAB podcast network. Anyway, moving swiftly along before I lose more track of this podcast. Another Super Rugby Pacific question I got here. An old chestnut from last season when Trans-Tasman came around, we were asking how many games will Australian teams actually win over New Zealand teams. They got 2 wins last year, both in Australia, with the Brumbies beating the Hurricanes and the Chiefs taking down a 13-man Chiefs outfit, I think it was, by the end of the game up in Townsville. So, Rissy, how many? I think you offered a line about 4.5 at one stage on this podcast last season. How many?
I was quite confident last season, and I think it was either 4.5. I'll stick with a high ash line, but I'll go a bit lower. I think 3. I think the Highlanders and the Hurricanes. I think they'll come against the Highlanders and the Hurricanes. I can't see the sort of Chiefs, Blues, Crusaders, providing they don't go down to 13 men in a game, losing the team. But if 3, I could see that between the Highlanders and the Hurricanes losing 3, probably to the Brumbies and the Reds, I think. So, 3.
What's your number, Paul?
Yeah, I'm there as well, Rissy. I'm actually tempted to go one higher and go 4, but we know that's a dodgy number for you, big guy. First of all, hopefully we'll get to see the New Zealand teams play the Australian teams later in the season. But if that does happen, look, a number of those Australian sides are very, very poor. But I can see the Canes and the Highlanders struggling over there once or twice. So I can definitely see 3 games lost. I'm sure that we'll see an upset with maybe the Blues or the Chiefs getting knocked over there as well. So, 3. I'll go with 3, but it wouldn't surprise me to see 4 wins by the Australian teams. They are playing, 25 games. Yeah. So that's not a big percentage, to be fair. And
what's your pick, Fisky?
Yeah, the boys are spot on. I can't argue with that. I was toying with 2.5, but I think flat 3 is the line. I think flat 3 is the line. I think it'll fall almost on that because I just can't see an Aussie team winning New Zealand. It might happen, but I just can't see a side even entering a match in New Zealand lower than about $4.50 or $5, and in some cases a lot longer. And then at home, really, you can put a line through the Waratahs and to an extent the Rebels and the Force, I think. The only thing in their favour, it's kind of a weak conference, so they might be a bit refreshed when they play some of these weary New Zealand sides, and they might secure a win or two in Australia. So 3 is the number. I just can't see it even hitting 4, to be honest, and 5 would be a miracle.
Yeah, no, and along the same lines as you guys, I sort of obviously think they're going to have to come across the Tasman, any wins they do get, and then you look at the Reds and the Brumbies, between them, they play each New Zealand franchise at home once, so you think they could probably get one off the Canes, Highlanders, maybe the Chiefs, like 1 or 2 out of those. And then I think the only other areas that, if you get late in the season and a team's got a seed locked up for the finals, so they don't send guys across the Tasman, that's maybe where the other one comes. So I'd go the flat 2, but I've always been negative in that aspect. So I'll continue to stick with the brand.
Never.
In just that aspect. Yeah, thank you.
Now, Paddy, you're good on all the numbers and how many people listen to the podcast. Do we know if Jacinda listens to our podcast? Because I just want to send a message out about the borders. I'd love to see them open.
I don't think she does, but we can certainly get this cut out and put on social if you want, Fisky. So I'll let you have free reign.
Respectfully, open those borders, please.
Always good to get stuck into a bit of politics on the Pick and Go podcast for some reason.
I'm speaking, it's all self-interest here. I've got credited a few pubs in Wellington and Christchurch, so I need to cash in.
You need your golf clubs too, don't you?
What's that?
You need your golf clubs too, don't you?
Yeah, golf clubs and Anyway, we're really off the track here, Paddy.
All right, we're moving on to the international game for a second here. Obviously, big year of international footy coming up. Just 1 year out from a World Cup, and especially the 3-match island tour of New Zealand, and which hopefully happens in the winter. I think should be very exciting. But keen to hear you guys' predictions for how the All Blacks are going to go in 2022. I've got penciled in here. I think they should have 14 games all up between the Rugby Championship, Ireland, and the end of year tour. What do you reckon the record's going to be come the end of the year, Fisky?
I'm not normally a negative person, but I have fears for the All Blacks this year. I think it's going to be one of those seasons where they'll get away with maybe a pass mark, maybe a little bit less, and time's running out to make a decision before a World Cup. Maybe time's already run out, but I don't think they can improve this year. In fact, I think they might regress. I think I'm worried about 10, and I'm really worried about lock to back row. I think we really battle with that physicality, and with Ireland coming out here, with us playing England and possibly France in the Northern Hemisphere, and South Africa again in 4 Nations or Rugby Championship, I think I could see 4 losses, and I think we'll lose 1 to Ireland. I think we'll lose 1 or 2 to South Africa, and I think we'll lose 1 in the Northern Hemisphere at the end of the year. So 4, and the unthinkable, maybe 5. I'm actually going to be against the All Blacks. I don't think this coaching staff have it in them to turn them around. I love the players. I think the talent's there. I just don't know if there's the strategy around retaining possession and turning pressure into points and handling different game plans. I just don't think the coaching staff are up to it. Paul?
On that note, just before I go to the boys of Batoni, keen to hear your thoughts on the addition of Joe Schmidt to the selectors panel. Do you think that'll maybe rub off into other areas of the game plan or in the All Blacks?
It's very similar to what they're doing at West Tigers with Tim Sheen sitting over the top. It's almost like a transition without announcing we're not happy and we're moving on eventually. It's almost a weak effort because as good as he is, he probably won't have final say. And it's kind of that in-between type of move where you know where they're headed, but they're too scared to pull the trigger. And everyone I speak to, everyone, we need Razor there, or imagine we had Rennie. It's just not just not working. And I want to hear everyone's thoughts on this. I'm a little bit worried.
Yeah. Richard, you're usually one of the positive ones. Can you bring this back around?
Probably a bit more positive than Fisky. I set my number at 3. The 3 losses. I think they still don't think they're going to have an amazing season. I think that they'll beat Ireland 3-0 if providing that series goes ahead. I know we've lost to Ireland a few times recently, but it's all been overseas. We're generally pretty good when we're playing at home. So, I'm going to back us to go. So 3-0 there. I think we'll lose at least probably 1 to South Africa in the Rugby Championship. I think we're supposed to play 3 games against them. I think we're supposed to have 3 games against England. I think we'll win that series, but we'll probably lose. We might lose a game there, and then there'll probably be a few more on that sort of end-of-year tour. And providing we play either France or Ireland overseas again, we might lose 1 there. So, yeah, I'm going to say 3. We're definitely not the strongest we've been recently, but there's enough talent there. And hopefully they can just sort of find a way to, just increase that physicality. I think as Fisky sort of mentioned there, it was really the issue at the end of the season. I don't know whether you can sort of blame it on the current situation and the bizarre, the tour that they had and the restrictions and all that. So hopefully things will sort of get a bit more back to normal. But it'll be, an interesting year, 1 year out from a World Cup. They really want to because I think the rest of the world is catching up to them, and they probably went backwards a little bit last year. So they really will want to step up this season, I reckon.
Yeah, no, they certainly will want to step up this season, I'd say. What are your thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, me and Fisky, we're singing from the same hymn sheet. I think that it's going to be a 10-4 record for the All Blacks this season. I think they'll drop the first test of the season as well to the Irish. I think they'll drop 1 to them. They'll definitely drop 1 to South Africa, probably over there. I wouldn't rule Australia upsetting the All Blacks in one of those tests. And then, of course, the end of the year, I see them losing to, if not England, maybe France. So there's 4 losses, a 10-4 record for mine. Look, I do like the addition of Schmidt to the selection panel. I just don't think he's going to have enough influence on the team to actually make enough of a difference from last season. So, yeah, I see them losing at least 4 games, 4 test matches this season. And I'm not sure that'll be enough to force changes before the World Cup.
Yeah, I think the Schmidt thing, it goes to show maybe if they hadn't pulled the trigger on Foster's extension pre-Rugby Championship last year and waited till they got home, maybe Schmidt's got a different job title. But, that's in the past now. What can we do? I've also got them down to 4 losses. I don't think they should win all 3 against Ireland. Just Ireland having never won in New Zealand. I know it is a good Ireland side, but if they are...
A few years ago, the Irish had never beaten the All Blacks.
Thank you, Paul.
First time for everything. First time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, it wouldn't shock me, but I'd still, I don't know what the betting will be, but you'd imagine 3-0 will go open that series as odds on favourite. Would you guys say?
Around $1.80, $1.90.
Yeah, I think 3-0 still be odds against, maybe 2.25.
Okay, yeah.
Let's not forget, and I think the All Blacks coaching staff kind of reflects where we sit now. It's old. It's sort of a stodgy, old-looking coaching staff, and you could maybe argue in a few positions that's what we're like on the field. And you come up against these young back rows in Ireland or in France. You got young halves and outside backs, and just the energy and the speed of the game. I just think we're falling behind. And anyway, I'll let you go on, Pat. I'm just worried. I'm worried.
No, that's all right. I won't go into too much detail. You guys have pretty much covered it. But I think we lose 1, if not 2, to South Africa. We definitely lose at Twickenham. Well, not definitely, but I think we lose that the way England are going. Some of those young backs, we got Marcus Smith and Freddie Stewart and the like. They look like they could be a real handful. And then, another one somewhere, whether that's against Ireland or Australia, or if we end up playing France at the end of the year. So I'll be taking 3.5 or 4. But I want to be positive again. So we're gonna switch things up and look to some things to get excited about. So just back to Super Rugby Pacific. What do you see as being potential, maybe a surprise package or someone to get excited about, a team or a player? Either or, I'll let you pick. Paul, do you want to kick us off here?
I'm going Ruben Love with the Hurricanes. And that all depends on where the Hurricanes coaching staff picture him in sort of, is he number one pick? I hope so. Which brings me back to how is Lincoln McClutchy not one of the top 3 first 5/8s in the Hurricanes catchment area? But anyway, well,
there was another good first 5 in the Hurricanes catchment area not long ago either. Just saying.
But Ruben Love, I think he showed enough in the NPC last season, and if they just give him a wee bit of free rein, because I think we'll see his best rugby there, and give him some consistent game time. I've got him as the number 1 first 5/8 in that squad. I'm just not sure whether the coaching staff of the Hurricanes have him in the same regard, but I hope they do, because I think he's someone that can ignite that a backline that the Hurricanes have, and I think we could see some very, very special things from Ruben Love this season.
So I'm going to love to hear any mention of Ruben Love there. How about you, Richard? Who are you keeping an eye on?
I'm just going to go with Fiji Drua. I just kind of want to be right here. I just really want them to sort of play that exciting brand of footy that we know the sort of Fijians can. We saw, obviously it's not the same team, but when Fiji sort of came, but the All Blacks last year, they really sort of just the heat that they bring. I was surprised to see them. I mean, I suppose it's that uncertainty, but them paying $151 take the tournament out when the Force and the Reds are paying 51 and the Waratahs 101. I thought maybe they could have deserved a little more respect, but looking through their squad, they sort of got guys who've sort of played a bit of NPC and that sort of thing over in New Zealand, but probably lacking a little bit of experience. But yeah, I just want to see them, and they might benefit from playing the Australian conference and sneak a couple of wins. I think a couple of upsets. So yeah, I reckon I'm looking forward to seeing them play.
You can have 1,000-1 with me, Rissy.
I'm not taking the 151, but
I'll take the 1,000-1.
I think they're exciting. I think if they're going to get a few wins, it'll be early in the year. I think just the season, the grind, being in a camp for 3 or 4 or 5 months, and injuries, I think that they'll battle towards the end of the year. But yeah, when they're at their best, particularly early in the year, hopefully they get a few wins. But I'll go a different. I thought Ruben Love was a great call out with Paul. I like him. I'm going to go on a different tact here. I'm looking at a few experienced All Blacks that have come back from either sabbatical or injury, just to see how they respond. I'm talking about Brodie Retallick, TJ Perenara, those types of players that probably came back. They were heralded. Sam Cane's another one who was injured, and they need a big year. I think they're kind of being selected on reputation, and we know how good they have been. I just want to see if they've got it. And a couple of players, Folau Fakutava, who was injured last year, I want to see how he responds. And player like Anton Leonard-Brown, another player who just hasn't really shot the lights out for a couple of years. So I'm looking at the more experienced players, heralded, great careers, but do they have it in them for 2 more years for this World Cup? So I'll be looking at those guys.
Well, I'm going to take your 1,000-1, Fisky, because I had the Drua down as well. I think they could really surprise a few people. Like, obviously, it's a different camp. Well, when I've got it down here, their first year in the Australian NRC, they won the whole thing. So it's not like it's a completely foreign concept being involved in a week-to-week competition here. I just think depth's not going to be an issue for them. Like, sure, we don't know a lot of these guys' names now, but they're going to have picked players there who would have ended up playing sevens for Fiji if it wasn't for the Drua being a thing. And we all know the sort of talent that they produce there. So I think especially getting all the Australian teams up first, like getting the Rebels and the Force and the Waratahs early on is a gift. Like they'll win a few of those, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them push for a quarterfinal spot. I think there'll be 4 or 5 real guns there and unveiled there. So.
Mate, you still on the Christmas egg, on the eggnog.
It's time.
We're comparing the NRC to Super Rugby.
Well, they're playing against the same teams.
We talking about practice. We're talking about practice.
I'm loving this American accent Paul's brought into the podcast today.
If you guys want to,
obviously, Patrick.
Yeah, I forgot what
I think I'll
will
be
be
definitely getting on them the first few weeks. There'll be some juicy odds on offer.
Yeah, because the Force and the Rebels just absolute world beaters. There's no way they could put up a fight against them. No, we'll negotiate stakes off your ear, Fisky. But
okay, one kebab. You put up one kebab, I'll pay you 1,000 kebabs. But you got to have it in one sitting.
Might not be under 85 kgs after 1,001 kebabs, so we'll see what goes on there. But anyway, just more positivity, of course. Good to hear everyone getting fired up there. So another sort of on the same note here, we talked about the All Blacks and maybe needing an injection of youth. Fisky, you certainly suggesting that. Who's someone who you think is worth keeping an eye on as a potential All Blacks bolter when the squads are named?
Yeah, so I had 2 players written down. Folau Fakatava, and we don't know how he'll respond after had a wonderful 2020 and then injured last year. So, yeah, I think stocks are quite thin in the 9. Taking Aaron Smith out of it, I think we need a little bit more of a boost there. And Lockie Bashir, we've tried a million combinations there in the back of the scrum, and he keeps being left out. And I think this is his year to run with him, because what they've tried is not working. And I'd love to see Bashir get a run. And he hasn't let anyone down. I think he's going to have a full Super Rugby season under his belt, and he'll be one that I'm looking for to make the squad. So Lachlan Bashir and Folau Fakatava, I hope they respond in Super Rugby, and then I hope they get selected for the All Blacks.
Yeah, certainly Fakatava, I think, could be very exciting. Hopefully he's completely recovered from that ACL by the time.
And another player, and Paul will love this player. Another player will be keeping an eye on in a similar vein is Peter Umaga Jensen. I think he has this uncanny knack of beating the first tackler every time, and if he can keep up that form at this level, I'd be picking him for the All Blacks out wide too. There's just a lack of class, or I guess lack of impact in those positions that I mentioned, and maybe they're the answer. So fingers crossed, see how we go.
Was he your one, Paul?
Similar position. I'm going with Roger Tuivasa Sheck.
That does not count as a bolter. That is a complete cop-out.
Why is he not a bolter? He's never played Super Rugby before.
He's probably the most highly talked about player leading into the season.
Well, he's a bolter. He's a rugby.
How much are they
rookie.
paying him? They're not paying him to play for the Auckland.
Oh, this is ridiculous. You're shifting the goalposts again. This is ridiculous. Roger Tuivasa Sheck will be a bolter in the All Black squad.
Your $1.80 bolter. Value bet.
I'd take the $1.80. Mold it up with a drill.
A Super Rugby rookie. But what we do know, the boy can tackle. I lost count the number of goal line tackles RTS made for the Warriors, and he had to make quite a few of them because the line up front was fairly leaky at times during his tenure with the Warriors. He'll be learning the game outside Bowden Barrett, which is just a big plus for him. And I just his attitude, I really do like his attitude. He's a very positive person by nature, and he's a go forward person, and that's exactly what the All Blacks need in the midfield. Someone who isn't afraid to go forward and bust that first tackle. So Roger Tuivasa Sheck, thank you very much, Patrick.
Who's your bolter, Richard? Richie Mo'unga?
Wow.
Sam Whitelock, maybe. I had Fakatava written down as well. So, yeah, I'm excited to see sort of what he does coming back from injury. But he's probably, well, you imagine he's our third choice sort of halfback, maybe even second choice halfback, if he can sort of come back fit. The Highlanders are very lucky. And I also had written down Stephen Perifeta. It was more just kind of like, watched him in the NPC last year. I was really really impressed with him. He was a top point scorer, and he was a massive sort of cog in that Taranaki machine that was just unstoppable. Playing in that Blues back line. So I think will he be playing fullback? No one else who, yeah.
We'll
Maybe.
get to it in a second. I've got another Blues back line.
There you go.
Here.
So if he can sort of get a spot on that back line, and
that's a great ball, Rissy. He's a great footballer.
Yeah, I remember you shouting him out. I think it was in the last episode last year, and so yeah, if he can get a spot in there, starting line up and sort of make the most of his time in that Blues back line. We're obviously not lacking in outside backs, but he just might bring something different. So yeah, perfecta, 7 perfecta.
Nice one. I've gone with a different Blues fullback. I reckon Zahn Sullivan could be a real gun by this sort of the end of the season. I think he's been particularly forgotten because obviously Auckland didn't play in the NPC, so we didn't get a chance to see him doing this thing there. But he was outstanding in the NPC the year before when they made the final and with the top seed the whole way through. He's got a great kicking game. He reads the game really well. Obviously incredible with ball in hand. I think he's got a complete sort of in the Geordie Barrett mold as well with the long kicking game and everything like that. So if the All Blacks do develop a bit more of a system to work around Geordie and at the back, he could fit in there well as a backup to him. And I just think, he's such a classy player. He's going to be an All Black sooner rather than later. So hopefully they do take a chance on him and get him in there soon enough. So
yeah, he was very good last year actually. I've sort of forgot about him. Just having a wee look. Oh, because Perifeta is listed as an inside back, but he might get a shot.
I think they played Perifeta more in Super Rugby Trans Tasman, and Sullivan couldn't really get a look in. But then once they were playing the Aussie teams, and they started to work him in a little bit more there. So hopefully, because none of them are going to play every game, especially with playing all these New Zealand teams early on, and like Bodie's going to have to be rested. RTS isn't going to play every game straight away, so they're all going to get opportunities.
He could play 10, 12, 15 probably, couldn't he? So. The Blues back line. It's going to be good to watch. There's no doubt about it.
If they get their hands on any ball.
I'm getting excited. I really am, guys. I know we've been a bit negative about the All Blacks in general, but it's just going to be good to see everyone out playing footy. And Six Nations next week as well.
Well, on the international note of things, before we touch on the Six Nations, just one last prediction from each year. I want to know who you think is going to be crowned World Player of the Year at the end of the year. A bit of a long-range prediction, but I'll let you go first, Fisky.
Yeah, so DuPont is the reigning champion, and he'll take some beating. It's only the special players win 2 in a row, so I'm not going to pick him, even though I think he's a tremendous general, and I think France will have a great year. I'm going to go his offsider, Romain Ntamack. I think he's just class personified, and if they're looking for another option behind a big pack, those two halves work together well. So Ntamack is my pick as International World Rugby Player of the Year.
Nice one. Who are you going for, Paul?
I'm going to go Pablo Matera. I think he's going to go huge for the Crusaders. He'll be the best player for the Argentinians for their international season. I think he's just going to be a big standout this season. So Pablo Matera.
Nice one. And Richard?
I'm going to go with someone Fisky shouted out before, actually, Eben Etzebeth. Just as you sort of said earlier, he's such a big unit, and he just sort of, I don't know, he just feared on the field, and it was probably unlucky not to be nominated this year, I thought. I was looking through the Rugby Pass top 100, and he was number 2 on that list. So there was a few debatable calls on that list, but and DuPont. DuPont, he will take a lot of beating, but when you look at the sort of previous winners, there's only the likes of Carter, McCaw, and Bowden Barrett who've won the award more than once. So I don't think he'll win it again. Yeah, so I think we're expecting big things from Etzebeth this year.
You've read my mind there. I've gone with Etzebeth as well. I think DuPont probably deserves to be the betting favourite if there was a market for it, but just going back to back, it's a tough ask. So I thought I'd go a little bit off the beaten track, but apparently not. You're sort of looking at the history of the award. You do need to be winning either the Six Nations or the Rugby Championship or a World Cup in World Cup years to win the award, it seems like. And I think the Springboks probably win the Rugby Championship this year, especially if they actually get some home games. And Etzebeth's going to be a huge part of that if they do. Just he's the fulcrum of that forward pack. He plays 80 minutes every game under like sort of Malcolm Marks would be another contender there, or maybe Khaleesi if it's as the captain. But yeah, to me, it's the best player and the heartbeat of their forward pack. So
Off the beaten track. I've heard it all now. Wow.
Any more bolters you want to shout out, Paul, before we move on?
Better. Off the beaten track, please.
What about Aaron Smith? Do we reckon he'll be in the All Blacks?
He won't be playing for the Highlanders. Whakatawa will.
You heard it
Anyway,
here first on the Tuck and Go podcast.
I'm loving this banter early.
Aaron Smith, the 54th best player in the world, according to Rugby Pass, but I won't get stuck into that. Could do a whole podcast on it. 20 spots below Nick White. All right, no, we've answered all our questions, and I've got rid of some of my gripes from the off season. So I just want to throw it over Fisky now. If you've got any other predictions or anything else you want to touch on for the year ahead.
No, I've kind of talked about it. Like I'm excited. I think the two new entrants to Super Rugby Pacific will struggle in a long season. These other franchises are very well adept at managing injuries and other distractions during the season. So I think they'll have some highs during the year, but towards the end of the year, peter out. Really interested in how the All Blacks progress this year. I'm really concerned about the coaching staff and their ability to turn things around. I thought we were humiliated in those last two tests, and that rarely happens. We get beat, we don't get humiliated. And we're basically on a hat trick. First test up this year. So my eyes are on those senior All Blacks. This is probably New Zealand's biggest year in over a decade. I think it's a huge one. So I'll be watching very closely, very excited. But yeah, if I'm going to make a prediction, I think the All Blacks might struggle that much. They might be forced into making changes with the coach. That's my mad prediction.
All right, cool. Anything else you want to touch on before we finish up?
Fellas? Oh, no, I was going to say this is my last podcast. Finishing up, boys, and honoured to spend so much time on these podcasts and in New Zealand. So loved every minute of it, and I'll be checking in closely to listen every week and give some constructive feedback. And I've had a ball, guys, and hopefully I'm back one day. But loved every minute of it, and thank you.
I really appreciate all you've brought to the podcast. I know you're a fan favourite. We've legitimately had people in the inbox asking if you were going to be on every week, so you will be missed. And I look forward to hearing your feedback as we break down each of the Drewers' victories over the upcoming season. So very much looking forward to that. But yeah, appreciate everything you've brought to the podcast over the last couple of years. Thanks for joining us.
Hopefully we can get Fisky like live sideline for a Super Rugby match or something. Just hook him up with a phone or something.
Waratahs debut.
Yeah, the Waratahs.
Microphone in one hand, beer in the other. This is gold.
And the 12 Roberts and the 13 Fisk.
Yeah, look forward to it, guys. And on behalf of all the punters out there who I absolutely love, let's throw out some more bonus bets. Come on, guys.
And with that,
what have you got lined up for us this season, Patrick?
I'm banned from giving out bonus bet. That's your department, mate. But I think before we get anyone else into any trouble, we'll leave it there. Appreciate you joining us for one last podcast, Fisky, and thanks to Rich and Paul for joining us again. It'll be the three of us holding it down most weeks as the season goes along. We'll have hopefully other special guests here and there. Really appreciate all the research you did for us today, Paul. You just provided some excellent insight, and be more of that to come as the season goes along.
Track. Wow.
We'll, I believe at this stage, plan to be back next week as we start our team-by-team previews for Super Rugby Pacific. It'll be only a couple of weeks away at that stage, so plenty to get stuck into. And I'm fired up for the season ahead as well. Now after talking through all that with you guys, so looking forward to getting stuck into it for real. Cheers, guys.
Thanks for all the memories, Fisky.
Cheers, Fisky.
Thanks, guys.
One last
Thank
gift.
you.